Destiny. Both the word destiny and this game seem to share the same issue of being misunderstood. The dictionary, however, does a pretty good job at defining the word destiny as what happens in the future, the things that someone or something will experience in the future, or a power that is believed to control what happens in the future. Bungie, on the other hand, seemed to get lost on what Destiny was supposed to be and couldn't quite define what Destiny is exactly. Is it an MMO or not? A true RPG? Is it an FPS game with a focus on story or just arcade-style action? Let's take a look and see if we can shine some light on the darkness that Destiny casts over an already disappointing 8th gen. From the start, you get to create a custom character but with limited options. You get 3 classes, Titan, Hunter, and Warlock, and you get 3 races, Human, Exo, which is some kind of human-like android, and the Awoken, which is an alien race with humanoid features. You can also choose your gender. You also get to choose some appearance options like facial features and hair color. This feature of customizing your character is a nice first impression that gives you the MMO/RPG feel that Bungie was going for. The problem though, which should have been obvious, is that Destiny is an FPS. Why have custom characters when you never see yourself? I know you see yourself at the tower, which is like your home base where you pick up new missions, buy weapons, and other things. And a few other times throughout the game it switches to third person, but that's not the majority of the time you actually spend playing the game. The other problem with customizing your character is that anytime you upgrade your boots, helmet, or other armor pieces, there is a change in appearance. You constantly have to choose between looking the way you want versus the better level gear. This totally negates you having to take the time to make your character look the way you want it to. Some say the custom character isn't for you to look at, it's for others to look at, so everybody looks different in the world. Which makes sense, but the upgrades pretty much do that for you. The customization is obviously a bunch of added fluff from the developers that seems like something innovative, but it's really not. Choosing your class makes virtually no major difference other than appearance and your super attack. There are a few minor differences, but nothing noteworthy. It's about as much of a difference as choosing between 1 or 2% milk. Everybody shoots the same guns from the same 3 weapon slots, primary, secondary, and heavy. Everybody has a melee attack, grenades, and a super attack. There are no stealth kills or special back attacks, which is very disappointing. Your playstyle can be the same for any class. There really is no benefit or downside to what you choose. In games like Mass Effect, Dark Souls, or Diablo, you really have to be sure what type of character you want. It actually makes a big difference in the type of weapons and abilities you have, and your entire playstyle depends on your choice. You do have a subclass, which can give you a little variation in skills, but not much to make or break your playstyle. One nice feature is that any unlocked skills you have can be switched out at any time on the fly to adapt to different situations. After choosing your class and quote-unquote creating your character, you get introduced to the quote-unquote story. Now, right from the start, Destiny loses you in a cheap attempt to actually come up with any plot or a character development. Old Russia, the last city on Earth, is the location that a mysterious space being known as the Traveler has settled down on. Ghosts, which are little flying robots that help the Traveler, go out to find guardians to try and protect the Traveler and prevent the destruction of the universe from a mysterious evil known as the Darkness.
Darkness is coming.
Darkness, brothers.
Magic! Darkness! Bro! Darkness! You...
Darkness will fall.
Through the valley of darkness.
Darkness, damn you!
Darkness! The darkness!
Yep, the Darkness. Some generic evil boogie monster out to ruin your day. And that's pretty much the whole story. The game hints at a real story on a few occasions, but each time it just uses a cop-out to blow off the story.
Well, you've been dead a long time, so you're gonna see a lot of things you won't understand.
You must have no end of questions, Guardian.
What happened to it?
I could tell you. I could tell you.
I don't even have time to explain why I don't have time to explain.
How did the Awoken survive?
No one knows.
There is no explanation to the history of the Guardians, the Traveler, the classes or races you choose as your character, or anything. The enemies have no backstory, and neither does the Darkness. The story is pretty much just, you are a good guy, and you need to go shoot the bad guys or the universe will die, no questions asked. There are literally 6 characters in the campaign. There is you as the Guardian, the ghost who basically just unlocks doors for you, the speaker who is just some guy at the tower that tells you nothing important, a stranger that tells you nothing, and two weird brother and sister awoken characters that do nothing but set up DLC. You don't even learn any names or backstory to these characters either. This game might as well be called Space Shooter Video Game. There is a database on Bungie's website that has a bunch of information that you unlock from playing the game, but it's another cheap attempt at just dodging the story and watering down the actual game. It doesn't even feel like it actually enriches your experience either. I guess gameplay would be where this game finally starts to show a little bit of the $500 million that was spent on this IP, but it's still nothing groundbreaking. It's a first-person shooter. We all know how FPS games work, so going into major detail would be unnecessary. You point, you shoot, you try not to get shot, and that's pretty much been the FPS formula for way too long now. Destiny's guns have almost no feeling to them. You might as well be shooting spitwads. Your aim is virtually unaffected by movement or any kind of stamina for holding your aim, and there's virtually no kickback and no muzzle jump. It's a casual gamer's dream come true. Let's take a look at some shooting mechanics in the Mass Effect 3 shooting range. I'm surprised Destiny didn't have a shooting range, but maybe it wasn't in their budget. Nice kickback. Lots of muzzle jump. See, shooting should be part of the challenge. Let's grab some different guns here. No, I'm not trying to correct my aim when I'm taking these shots. I'm just letting the gun do what it naturally should be doing. Your aim should be bouncing around when you take shots. It should be part of the challenge. So we grabbed a couple different guns. We got an auto rifle here. Very sporadic, lots of muzzle jump. Kinda all over the place. Handgun. Handles a lot easier. Wider grouping. Pretty standard. Yeah, submachine gun. Lots of muzzle jump. Very wide grouping. See, Bungie, that's how guns are supposed to shoot. They shouldn't be just a piece of cake. You should have to take some effort to aim. Let's take a look at some other guns and see what you think. Lots of kickback. Looks nice. Doesn't affect your aim though like it does in Mass Effect, which is too bad. It's more of a visual effect. Let's take a look at the next scene, see what you think between the two. No, I'm not trying to say that Destiny should be all crazy and violent and bloody like Wolfenstein, but if you're going to make a game that primarily focused on shooting, at least make your guns look and handle like guns. There is ample firepower though. There are many different guns with lots of variety to them and lots of upgrades for your arsenal. There are guns that are specifically designed to break down shields, as well as the standard guns you would find in any other shooter, but on a massive scale. The grenade mechanic Destiny uses is the same flawed design as almost every other game that has grenades. It would be better if you had a way to properly aim your grenade. Some games actually let you control the arc of your throw and show you the area of effect. And some games actually let you cook your grenade so it will explode with less delay after your throw. Although in Destiny, grenades detonate almost immediately after hitting the ground, which isn't too bad. The bright glow of the grenade doesn't help you out either when your enemy sees it coming a mile away and can easily evade it, especially in multiplayer. Combat is smooth, despite the totally weak and casual feeling gunplay. Your character has lots of mobility, but it's focused too much on jumping and gliding in the air, which a lot of times just leaves you hanging out in the air like an open target during duck hunting season. It would have been a lot nicer if you had more mobility on the ground. You can sprint, but it still feels a little slow. A better sprint option or an evasive dash to quickly run a cover would have come in handy. There is a ground slide, which is pretty cool. Now, the combat in multiplayer is pretty much the same as the campaign, except you're just running around shooting other Guardians. Matches consist of 6 versus 6 in different modes that all consist of running around shooting each other. You might be noticing a pattern here. I will say it was nice for Destiny to apply some balancing to the players' levels to help even out the playing field. It helps newer or lower level players have a chance against the higher or more experienced players. It's not a perfect system, but it is a nice touch. The level design and missions play out almost identical to each other throughout the whole game. It's a repeated pattern of point defense horde mode, where your ghost works on something and you battle waves of spammed enemies. There are some vehicles involved at times, which is a nice touch, and there's one time where you acquire a sword. This was actually what I thought was the best part of the entire game, especially since it switches to third-person view and lets you just chop down everything in your path. Enemy AI is almost non-existent. Many times a bunch of enemies are just standing around doing nothing and they don't even notice you until you fired your first shot at point-blank range right in their face. Sometimes different enemy factions are fighting each other, which makes no sense because all the enemies are supposed to be working for the darkness. But you can just sit and watch them shoot it out or join in, and both sides will all of a sudden team up on you. Enemies seem to either just hide behind cover or just jump way out of cover and stand there like an open target. Occasionally, an enemy will even be lost and straggling around at the end of a battle. Bosses consist of battles of attrition. They are nothing more than bullet sponges, and there's really no tactic or real skill in defeating them. Just keep shooting until you're low on ammo, and the game spawns in another horde of minions that act as ammo replenishment after you kill them. Then repeat until the boss is down. There's no pattern to figure out or timing involved with when and how to attack. It's just keep shooting. Some bosses can last 20, 30, even 40 minutes or more, especially on the strike missions. The final boss was a little disappointing, as it was nothing more than 3 of the same bosses back to back, and they were the same as another boss you had already killed previously. Deaths really have no consequence either. You just respawn after a short while, or a partner can revive you and you just pick up where you left off. If everybody in your party dies in a restricted respawn area, you start the last scene over, but it's really not much of a setback. It would have been better if there was more challenge to it, like having a limited number of respawns, and the final bosses should have been against all 3 at the same time. I gotta say, the most rewarding part of Destiny would probably be exploring the gorgeous environment. The art team did a fantastic job creating a world that makes you want to take in the views and stop and smell the roses, or whatever the flowers are. There are 3 planets you actually get to explore when carrying out missions. Well, actually there are 2 planets, Mars and Venus, and then Earth's moon. There is also an asteroid reef where you run into the Awoken Queen and her eccentric brother. Where Bungie dropped their ball here is that you end up spawning into missions in the same spot over and over. You end up seeing the same scenery repeatedly, which feels quite lazy. There is a mode in the game that allows you to basically free roam, which is nice, and you can participate in optional random events if you wish. Upon exploring though, you realize the worlds are great to look at, but become dull and boring after a short amount of time. The maps are much smaller than what you would have expected based on what Bungie led us to believe. The weather could have been stronger and more dynamic as well. There really isn't much more than a light breeze brushing the grass or a slight drizzle of rain on Venus. Mars would have been the perfect opportunity for a big red sandstorm, and Venus could have had tropical rainstorms with its naturally orange water, which would look really cool. It would have been great to have some NPCs to interact with and enrich the lore in the environment, but there are none whatsoever, and throwing in a few animals once in a while to help make the world actually feel alive would have helped. Now the soundtrack is absolutely brilliant. Paul McCartney even had a hand in it. Many times the music is actually better than what's going on in the game. You could run around not shooting the enemies in order to make the scene last longer, just to listen to more of the music. There were a few instances where there wasn't any music at all, and it made for an awkward moment. I wish when there was a musicless moment that there would be some kind of ambient noise such as wind or local fauna, or perhaps the hums of electricity or other noises when indoors, but none really stood out. There could have been even just some quieter ambient music. The music pace was really just awkward overall. Your ghost is voiced by Peter Dinklage, who some of you may recognize from Game of Thrones and other works he's been in.
Feeling strong, my friend? Call me Elf one more time.
He's an angry elf.
Many people have had heavy criticism toward Dinklage's performance, saying things like he sounds boring, emotionless, or out of touch with the character. Now, I actually thought the performance was good. Dinklage was, after all, voicing a robot. Robots throughout movies and television, such as Data from Star Trek or C-3PO from Star Wars, have always sounded kind of stiff, awkward, or emotionless. which is widely regarded as the norm. The nuts and bolts of Destiny involve borrowed elements of RPGs and MMOs. This is where Destiny really loses its identity. I would say Destiny is an MMO with a little m instead of a big M, meaning it is a mini multiplayer online game versus a massive multiplayer online game. You do run into other people randomly throughout the game, and quite a few players can be found back at the tower. But there isn't the big ol' cluster you-know-what problem of other typical MMOs or MOBAs, where you can barely breathe, which is nice. I feel immersion is broken though every time another player is in your game. You are supposed to be an important character on a special mission to seek and destroy the enemy, and every time you run into somebody else it breaks the importance of what you're doing and how you as a player are central to the story. It just feels very inconsequential to be campaigning through Destiny when others are on the same mission as you are. I mean, why am I here if somebody else already opened this door or killed this boss? Other players can take your kills, which result in less XP, and other times they can just be annoying. You might be really enjoying yourself in one of the missions, enjoying the beautiful world, looking around, and all of a sudden, somebody annoying is dancing in front of you. Other problems with the MMO RPG elements are the loot system. You find yourself acquiring or finding loot that is useless. You can receive a weapon that is underleveled or an item you can't use with your class. It's all very random as to what's awarded. At the end of the mission, a person that was less effective in a group mission can win a better item than somebody that was the top performer. Perhaps this is to help the underdogs. Sometimes it seems like Destiny gives the weakest person the best tools to survive because the stronger people are already strong and it balances things out. But it still seems too random and can waste a lot of time and energy if you're trying to grind for special items and rewards. You can, however, store a limited amount of items in a locker, and you can use them later with another character, or dismantle the item for upgrades. Now, Destiny is an online-only game, which is basically Bungie's version of DRM. Making this game online-only is a major negative in my opinion. It gives gamers less choice in how they want to game and is unfair to those who either do not have internet or live somewhere with unstable internet. And it's basically you renting the game. You never truly own the game. Bungie can pull the plug anytime on Destiny. Bungie said the game would not work offline with the way they designed it, but I disagree. Many games are virtually identical to Destiny's overall design and are not online only, and I fear more games will be made this way in the future by other companies. Bungie has already been patching and revising the game, which is good for them to do, but it just shows how lazy development was. I don't see how a game with a $500 million budget would be so average and miss the target so badly. It feels more like a $5 million game. I honestly think the majority of the budget was spent on marketing and advertising and not on development. Destiny is supposed to be an ongoing series though, to last 10 years, but at this rate there's a lot of improvement to be had for such an ambitious project. There were a lot of disappointed people who were led to believe Destiny was going to be the game that defined the next-gen shooter. Even I was hopeful, although cautiously optimistic. After release, we were served a less than refreshing glass of watered-down Mass Effect with a little Halo and Borderlands mixed in. I understand it's hard to be innovative when developing a game that primarily belongs to the FPS genre, which at its core is quite basic and restrictive, but there are ever-growing technologies to help usher in new ideas. I really hope Destiny evolves and improves over the time as it's releasing more content in future installments. I also applaud Bungie for trying out a new recipe in game design, but many of the ingredients were just left out and the game felt undercooked. Bungie basically baked us a nice warm apple pie. It smelled good, it looked good, but when you cut into it you found out that it was hollow and empty inside. There was none of that sweet, delicious filling that we were led to believe would be there. Now, Destiny's slogan is "Become Legend," and perhaps with the right improvements it will become legend someday. If Bungie doesn't improve though, it's more likely that Destiny will be destined for failure.